Okay, in this part of the tutorial, we're going to cover how to generate the next drawing, which will be the exploded Axon metric. Now, what we want to do in the case of this drawing is to actually generate a 3D model of the steel frame in order to to generate our drawings from that 3D model. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to make a copy of the plan. So I'll go into my file, select my plan, type in copy, and I'll just move it off to the side. I want to make sure it's out of the way of these drawings so that they're not, so that it's not showing up when we're actually doing our layouts and stuff like that. And then I'm also going to go ahead and change my current layer to default. And I'm going to model the whole thing just on the layer default. And the reason for that is that it'll be easier when we do our drawing to kind of keep the line weights and layers more organized, and I'll show you that when we get to it. The other thing that I want to do is I want to rotate my view into 3D. So if you're in top view, you can hold Control-Shift on the keyboard, right-click on your mouse, and drag, and you'll be able to orbit. Now you can also look at your model in 3D in the perspective window, but I found that zooming in and out can become kind of difficult, and figuring out where you are can be difficult. So I generally like to work more in top view when I'm in 3D, or in front or right, and just orbit my model so I can kind of see what's going on. Okay, and then once you're in 3D view, you can start to generate the parts of your geometry. So I'm going to start by drawing the uprights, the vertical elements of the frame. So from my plan, I'm actually going to go ahead and draw a couple rectangles at the corners. So I'll just go up here, grab the rectangle tool, and draw a rectangle at each corner, one by one. I can just trace my plan. Okay. And then I want to go ahead and select those curves that I just drew. It should be closed rectangles. And then I'm just going to extrude them. So I'll type in extrude, CRV, for extrude curve. Now in here, the first thing I want to do is set the option solid to yes. And what that will do is it'll cap my geometry once it's been extruded, which is important because we're going to need closed solids later on when we're actually doing our modeling the rest of it. And then I can also in here I can just type in the distance I want to extrude it to. The height of my stool is 18, so I'll just type in 18 and press enter. Right now we're looking at it in wireframe. I'll just go to the top left, right click, change it into shaded. So there we can see we have our the 4 posts of our stool in gray, and you can see as long as the ends aren't open, that means our stool or our uprights are solid. Now the next thing I want to do is model the horizontal members. So I can do that in a bunch of different ways. I can draw more rectangles, so I could go in here, hit rectangle, choose the option 3-point. I could go 1, 2, and then draw the 3rd point upward, type in 1 inch, and click to the edge so that I draw it vertically like that. And actually I should have drawn it on the inside face, because remember the horizontals are just going to span between inside faces. And I could type extrude, make sure I'm on solid, go all the way across. I could also draw a rectangle like this and extrude that to 1 inch. Oops, I don't know why that extruded downward, but we can just move it. Okay, or I could just draw a box. So to draw these horizontals, the ones at the top of the frame, I can choose the box tool. I can click on 2 corners, and then I can type in 1 to draw a box. Okay, so that's the still frame. The last thing I want to do is, if you remember when we drew the elevations, we added in a little cap plate on all the uprights at 3/16 of an inch, just to close the top edge of our tube frame. So what I'm going to do is actually scale these guys back a little bit. I'm going to select all 4 of my uprights, type in scale 1D, 1 dimension. And what that allows me to do is scale something along a line, essentially. So if I were to click to the bottom corner of one of my uprights and then click to the top corner, you can see I'm just scaling it along that line. And because I clicked on 2 points, I can enter the dimension that I want it to become, which in this case is 17 minus 3/16. I could do a little math here. I could type in 17.8125 and press enter. Okay. And then I should be able to measure this dimension and come up with 3/16. And then if I go in here and just draw the little cap plates, okay. So that's essentially the frame. So what I would want to do next is actually decide how I want to draw this. Now, your assignment says to draw a exploded axonometric, and what that means is, number one, we want to draw it in like a 3D angle like this, not unlike what you see on your assignment sheet. But we also want to draw it and like pull off some of the elements of the frame so that we can kind of see all the different parts. We want to explode some of the elements. Now the main point of this drawing is going to be to show like you know, how many different parts there are, how many different types of parts there are, and where they go, or how they all kind of go together. So before I do anything, I want to choose the angle first that I'm going to show this drawing in. So I can just kind of orbit around. The main thing here would just be to kind of choose an angle that like doesn't have things covering up other things like that, or like doesn't have things where you're covering up certain edges, like we're covering up that joint right there with this member. I just want to kind of orbit into a view that allows us to see everything that's going on. And then I'm gonna save my view. I'm gonna type in named view, and that should open this panel here. And inside of named view, we can actually save the angle of our 3D view. And that way, like, you know, even after we've made the drawing, if we had to make changes or anything, we could go back to this angle always and make a new drawing. So I'm gonna click on the little save as icon, call this my exploded axon, click OK. Okay, and then you can see that no matter what I do in my model, if I wanted to go back to that view, I could just go to named views, double click, and I'm at that view angle. And then I also want to actually, you know, explode some parts off so that I can kind of see what the individual pieces are. So first I'm going to explode one of the uprights. I'm just going to select the upright and the little cap plate, type in move, and then I'll draw it out to the side. Again, make sure you're in the right angle so you can kind of make sure that the parts that you draw out aren't intersecting with the 3D view. And I'm sorry, actually what I want to do is copy it, not move it, so we can see, you know, where the part goes as well as like what it is individually. I'm also going to go ahead and move the cap plate up so we can see that that's a separate element. So I can type in move, constrain it to vertical by clicking this little vertical option. move it up like that. And then I'm also going to move one of my horizontals up. Again, I can just type copy, hit vertical, or type V, enter, and then drag it up, make sure I'm in the right angle, and that it's not going to intersect anything. That looks pretty good. I'm actually going to move this back just a little bit. Okay, so once we have our view established, we can go ahead and do a make 2D from that. So I'm going to select all my geometry from my 3D model, and I'm going to type in make 2D. Now in this little dialog, there's a couple things I want to pay attention to. One of them is this option, maintain source layers. You always want to have that on. And what that will do is it'll take the layers that all your objects in your 3D model are on and make a separate layer for them when it generates 2D line work. And the reason that that's useful is it's going to make it a lot easier to line weight when you get to that stage. In this case, we just have one layer, so it won't make a huge difference. But the other thing we want to check is scene silhouette, and I'll show you what that'll do right now. So once those two options are set, I'll click OK. Now, make 2D will always generate your drawing in top view, and it'll always place it near the origin. So in my viewport, you can see kind of where it is. It's actually on top of my other drawings right now. And because I just ran the command, all those lines are still selected. So I can just type in move and kind of move them out of the way over there somewhere. And then I can also type in top to go back into my, 2D top view. Okay. Now if I go back to my layers panel, you can see that a few new layers have been generated. One of them is scene silhouette curves. You can see under there I have a layer called default. The reason being that my 3D model was made on the layer default. So if I had different layers represented in my 3D model, I would have them all in each category. And if I select default under scene silhouettes, right click, select objects, you can see Rhino has automatically created the silhouette lines or the profile lines for our Axon drawing. So I can go ahead and just right click on the layer heavy and go to change object layer. So I've already done my profile line, so that helps a lot in terms of line weighting. Then I would choose the rest of those lines, which are under curves. So click on the layer, default, select objects, and I would change those all to the layer medium. And you can see if I were to lock that layer that the red lines are still there. Now it does mean there's duplicate lines there, but it doesn't matter because once we go to print and the line weights are showing up, the thicker line will just kind of be all that you can see. So the other thing that we would want to do is just edit a couple of these lines. So I'm going to go in here and edit the lines that form the cap plates. Just make them a lighter line weight to kind of show that they're forming part of the same surface. Okay. So now we have this drawing completely line weighted. I'm going to add a couple of dashed lines. So I'm going to change my current layer to dash, draw a line, and I want to use this to show like how I've exploded my object. And actually I can't do that, I gotta do this. And that just helps us understand visually like where the lines, or where the part came from, or which part it is. Okay. Do the same over here. Okay, so now we have all of our kind of indications of where these parts came from. And I think that drawing is pretty much good to go. And what we would want to do next is basically show or start to set up our pages. There's a couple reasons we want to do that, but I'll show you that right now. So first, to generate a layout, I want to go down to my viewport tabs, click on the little plus, click on New Layout. And again, on your assignment sheet, it's asking for an 11 by 17 drawing set. So we're going to make sure we're in 11 by 17. You always want to choose Rhino PDF. If you're not in inches, you want to go to Options, or I'm sorry, go to Units, click on Layout in the left-hand side, and change into inches. Okay, and make sure we're in landscape. I don't know if I said that. And click OK. And so now we've added a viewport down at the bottom, and you can see the white space represents our 11 by 17. And this outline represents our detail view. So if we move those edges around, you can see we're kind of clipping like how much of our model we can see through this little window. First of all, I'm going to set that layer, or set that window to another layer, to the layer default. Now that curve will not print when we go to print this document, so we don't need to worry about that. But it'll also allow us to set a scale. So if we click on the outline and go to Properties, click on the little button that says Detail. In here, we can choose a scale that we're looking at our model at. If we go to the assignment sheet, the scale for each drawing is defined there. Our plan section elevation should be at 3 inches equals a foot. Over here, I'll just type in 3 inches on page equals 12 inches or a foot in my model. Okay, and then I can just move my window around to kind of make sure it's big enough. And finally, you know, this is the right scale, but obviously the layout is not in a good position, so we can clearly see everything. I'll just go and double click inside of the detail view, right click to pan, and I'll just move my model over to where I can see everything within that detail view. Double click to exit the detail view. So we're going to use this first of all just to make sure our layout is working. Now, in order to make sure I have enough space on my page, I need to bring something else in. If I go to our D2L course site, go down to Resources, and download this 3DM file called Shop Drawing Title Block. Then in Rhino, we can drag that file in. So go to wherever you downloaded it, drag it into Rhino, make sure you're on your layout page so that it places it on the layout. Drag it in there, and we're going to choose the option Import File. Click OK, and you can see it should automatically place it right in the right spot on our layout. Now, first of all, I mean, the title block is basically like you know, kind of standardized section where we state all the information for, like, you know, what the drawing is, how many pages there are, where we are in the document, who drew it, all that stuff. So we want to, on each page, we want to kind of avoid overlapping with the title block on our layout. So I could go back into model space and just kind of tighten up my layout a little bit in order to use less space. I could also go to my section markers and go to scale 1D, snap to the midpoint, and just hold Shift to go straight out on ortho. Bring those in a little closer. Okay, and then if we go back to our layout, now you can see we're already kind of out of the way of the title block. We can just move it over a little bit more, and then I'll bring the detail window across. Now, the other thing that's great about this, or about, you know, laying out your drawings early, is if we go up to the top where it says Page 1, and right click and go select the option Print Preview. Now when we zoom in and out, we should be able to tell kind of which, or how our line weights are reading. So you can see we have a whole bunch of different line weights. We can also type in zoom, and select the option 1:1. That should print, or that should show us what it'll look like at the scale we're printing. But the reason it's really good to look at your line weights to scale is that, when I zoom in and out on this page, my line weights don't change, right? So when I zoom in, the line weights get bigger, right? So I'm actually looking at really what the line weights will be relative to the scale of the drawing. Whereas if I were in my Rhino window and I were looking at print preview, even though I can kind of see how my line weights work, I'm not looking at them at the right scale. So even when I zoom in, the line weight stays the same. So there might be a level of zoom that the line weight looks good, but it's not necessarily going to work when we print it unless we know what scale or what zoom level we're printing at. So it's useful to use the print preview option just on the layout page so you can kind of preview how your line weights are looking. Now the other thing we want to do is actually fill out the title block. So in order to do that, I'm going to go under dimension. I'll set that to my current layer. Again, dimension, that's the layer we're going to use to label everything, add dimensions, add symbols and stuff like that. So I'm going to use that to fill in my title block. And I'll just type in text, enter the command text. And in here, excuse me, I can enter whatever information I need to write. So under class, I'm going to write arc241. And I can also change the size, the height of the text. I'll change it to like 0.25. Click OK. And then I can place that guy in my text, in my title block. So I could go ahead and copy this as well to each section. And then just go through and kind of fill out the information. I can go in properties under text and change the actual text. So I could change to today's date. Under drawn by, you want to enter your name. Now you'll see sometimes the text box will overflow. Like if we were to print like this, it would cut off our letters. So the best way to edit this is just to move the extents of the text box. I can just grab this little grip right here and move it over. And you can see it'll snap to like a tighter text box. I would do the same for this. Oops. This one, we may even have to make it a little smaller. Again, we can do that in properties under text. And under title, we want to add kind of all the information about what it is we're showing. So we could say like, assignment 2A, shop drawing, and indicate whether we're drawing a steel or a wood frame. And then we'll just enter our sheet number. That'll change with each sheet, obviously. Okay, and then later I'm going to go over how to label all these drawings and dimension them and add more detail to your layouts. But for now, that'll be the end of this video.